Community is not something you find, it's something you create. Real neighborhoods aren't built by developers or politicians. They're built by people who care enough to roll up their sleeves and do the work. Today, I want to connect that idea to a heartbreaking yet inspiring event: the January 2025 California wildfires and the families rebuilding in their aftermath. We'll see how their resilience mirrors some of my own experiences from en route to the Sunrise Saloon. Stories of graffiti, grass, and even a flying Happy Meal. In early January 2025, a series of wind-driven fires tore through Southern California. The Palisades and Eaton fires burned for 24 days, destroying more than 16,000 structures and burning 37,000 acres. At least 29 people lost their lives. For survivors, the emotional toll was overwhelming. ABC News followed families like Marcus Ubungan and Ursula Tran, whose Altadena home was decimated. Another couple, Katia and Adam Hausman, described the grieving process. First, you're numb, then panicked, and eventually you try to turn the anxiety into a path forward. When they returned to their burned-out home, they sifted through ash to find their daughter's water bottle and a single saucepan. Little bits and pieces that you still hang on. It's hard to imagine that kind of loss. Yet what stood out to me was their determination. They didn't wait for someone to rescue them. Neighbors organized cleanups, shared meals and information, and began to rebuild together. Community wasn't something they discovered in the ashes. It was something they actively created. Their story takes me back to the early days of my real estate career. I loved my condo in Dorchester, until I looked down from the roof deck. Ronan Park, my neighborhood's green space, was a mess. Graffiti covered the cement walls. The grass was a foot high, and trash lay everywhere. It gave everyone a sense that the city had abandoned us. I decided not to accept it. I rented an industrial sandblaster and spent a day removing every tag. It created a cloud of dust that coated cars within a block, but nobody complained. They were grateful. Then I bought a lawnmower and started cutting the grass myself. Grandmothers and children brought dollar bills and thank you notes. One note simply read, "God bless you." I photocopied each note and sent them to the mayor's office as proof that people cared. The response? The mayor threatened to have me arrested if I set foot in the park with my mower. My answer was colorful, but my message was simple. Until you do your job, I'm going to keep doing mine. Eventually, we negotiated. The city would mow and clean up if I stopped. 40 years later, they're still keeping that promise. And so am I. Why did it work? Because I didn't wait for permission. I didn't complain on social media. I showed up, got into what John Lewis called good trouble, and removed my ego. That's how you create community. My enthusiasm for a cleaner neighborhood wasn't always appreciated. One day, I pulled up at a red light and watched a cab driver toss his half-eaten Happy Meal, soda, fries, ketchup and all, right out the window. I was incensed. I scooped up the mess, opened his back door, and threw it onto the seat like a fast food grenade. He jumped out with a 12-inch knife and chased me around my car. Horns blared, people stared, and eventually, he got back in his cab. I followed him, called the police, and pressed charges. Some would say I overreacted, but to me, it was another moment of standing up for the community I love. Dorchester was always entertaining. There was the time a tenant pretended to be dead, then kicked a dent into my car when I checked on him. There were contractors who swore like sailors, and one who installed kitchen cabinets for me, and then returned at night to steal them. And there were endless dealings with City Hall, where one department contradicted another, and basements flooded in sub-zero temperatures. Once, while wading waist-deep in freezing water to shut off a valve, a dead rat floated by my ear. Each adventure added a little more grit. The work was hard, but the upside was enormous. So how do burnt-out neighborhoods in California relate to a park in Boston or a flying Happy Meal? It's the same lesson. Community doesn't magically appear. It's forged through action. Families like the Housemans, digging through ashes for a saucepan, remind me of my neighbors bringing dollar bills for mowing the park. Marcus Eubingen and Ursula Tran, refusing to be defined by loss, mirror the neighbors who covered for my sandblasting dust. Whether it's cleaning up graffiti, confronting a litter bug with a knife, or helping your neighbor salvage a water bottle from the rubble, you create community by doing something. And sometimes, like the mayor threatening to arrest me, or the cabbie pulling a knife, you face opposition. You might get dusty or scared or even chased. But if you don't act, who will? The families of Southern California aren't waiting for somebody else to rebuild their homes. They're organizing, volunteering, and taking small, meaningful steps toward normalcy. That's exactly what we did in Dorchester, and it's what each of us can do wherever we live. When I think about the future, I remember that quote: "Community is not something you find, it's something you create." Creation comes from courage, compassion, and a willingness to get into good trouble. It comes from mowing a park no one else will mow, confronting litter, fixing your own leaky basement, or helping a neighbor sift through ash to find a saucepan. The January 2025 wildfires showed how fragile life can be, but they also revealed how strong a community can be when people decide to build it themselves. I hope you'll take that to heart, whether you live in a condo overlooking a graffiti-covered park or in a town recovering from flames. Thanks for listening, and let's keep creating communities we're proud of.